Sellers, I am talking to you today about why I will not take an overpriced listing. Now, part of the reason is a very selfish reason, but we have those agents out there who buy the listing. If you don't know what this term means, it is a term referred to in the real estate world where a real estate agent decides to tell the seller, yes, I will price your house at whatever fantasy number you want to list it at, solely to have the listing. So that they have a completely different selfish motive to list it, while I have a very selfish motive not to list it. I'm going to break not only the selfish piece down, but all of the other reasons and how it damages you and your house and your equity by pricing too high, and why working with someone who is a yes person is the wrong choice. So let's talk about and start with the selfish piece, because I'm sure you're most curious about that. So selfishly, I am out of money if we cancel. I am out of time, money, and energy, because for a luxury listing, it is a minimum of $5,000 to get a listing off the ground. For a non-luxury listing, I would say it's a minimum of $3,000 to get that off the ground. So if I take your listing at a number that I already know it won't sell for, I literally am throwing money down the drain. That doesn't help me. It doesn't help my brand. I'm not in the business of collecting listings to look cool. I'm in the business of completing a job I was hired to do. So selfishly, it is a huge waste of my time, my money, and my effort to work with somebody who is in a total fantasy land of what their house should sell for, when I could put that time, money, and effort to work with somebody who's a little bit more realistic. And I know that I will actually have an ROI instead of $0 for every hour worked. Number two, we have my reputation. Again, it's a very selfish reason, but if you're not happy, I'm probably not happy. But if you're not happy because the house isn't selling, ultimately, that would be my fault. That is the real estate agent's fault for the house not selling, because they did not set the expectation up front by saying, Mr. Seller, this number isn't going to get it sold. And that's a business decision for every single agent. They have to decide if they are willing to take overpriced listings or not, because their selfish reason for taking it is that they look cool. They have a high number of listings. But what they're not realizing is that they're damaging their reputation, because when people look at them, whether it's the real estate agent or you as a seller, you see their name and you kind of understand, well, they tend to overprice things. They tend to have listings, but they never sell. Like, why aren't they selling? So both types of real estate agents are selfishly operating, and one is to benefit the seller and the other is to benefit the real estate agent. So again, I'm the kind that will not take an overpriced listing, because I'm not trying to waste my time and build a negative reputation for myself. Because if you're not happy, you're probably going to tell your friends, gosh, that Lauren house, she can't sell anything. Like, we've had her hired for 5 months and nothing's moving and we don't have showings. But what the seller isn't looking at, and I'm sorry if this is blunt, you're not realizing that you chose the price, and your price is the wrong price, because you are operating based on what you need, hope, and want to get out of the house. But if you try your number, your fantasy number that you think the house is worth, and it's not working because you're not having showings, and if you're not having showings, you're definitely not having offers, how are you supposed to get the house sold, right? So that's the whole entire selfish piece. You got the two different types of real estate agents, and you want the person who is going to be upfront with you and tell you what you don't want to hear in order to get your house sold, not tell you what you want to hear just so you sign the contract before they leave, right? All right, number two, overpricing kills the momentum. So let's talk about first impressions. We have the golden 14-day rule where 80% of buyers are looking at your house in the first 14 days. We have 80% of buyers' attention for the first 2 weeks on the market. And this is how it typically works. A buyer has been looking. They've been in houses, they've probably submitted offers, which means they've submitted offers and perhaps they haven't worked out, whether they were beaten by other offers or it didn't work out in the inspection period. They are considered a seasoned buyer. When the new agent comes to the market, when a new seller comes to the market, they're technically a little bit on the green side. They're a little bit of an amateur because they're coming in thinking that their house is the best thing ever, overpriced. Buyers immediately skip over it. Buyers, and I've said this since Zillow came out, buyers are way too informed, way too knowledgeable, and far too educated to know, like they can't be tricked, is what I'm trying to say. You can't come out of the gate and tell them that your house is worth X amount when they've been doing this for months and months and studying every single day. And not only just studying on the computer, but like I said, they're going into houses, they've submitted the offers, they've had an inspection report. They're seasoned, they know what's up. So when you come in thinking that your house is the greatest thing ever, they just pass it because they immediately know, okay, that house is going to have to sit for a little bit. They seriously need a price reduction. And that's it. Well, by the time you have that price reduction, that buyer, if they're still in the market, they're going to wonder why the house hasn't sold. They're going to think your house is stale. So that doesn't really put you in the best position, right? Because whoever has a stale listing ends up either removing it or selling it for less than they ever thought they would. So let's go to friction. This is probably the worst part of an overpriced listing, at least for me. When there's friction, it starts about 1 month in, the first week or two, again, those golden 14 days, the seller is still happy and hopeful. You are excited. You are probably getting some showings. You are still hopeful. I don't know what other word to use. You're hopeful because you're having showings and you're hopeful that you've chosen the right person to work with and that the house is ready to go and you are ready to sell. So you're waiting for that buyer. Well, 1 month passes and all of a sudden I start receiving the passive aggressive, the somewhat mean, the cold shoulder. That's the worst. And it becomes really uncomfortable. And I don't like that feeling because and this only happens when I give somebody a range, and that range is what I think it will sell in. But the range I give should have multiple showings, which should procure at least 2 offers. That number is slightly on the lower side, but it should produce 2 offers or more. And then we have the middle of the range that I give. That number is pretty much where it should be, and that you'll probably have showings and you should have 1 offer. Then you have the high end of the range, which every single seller seems to choose that. And then they are still insulted. This is my experience. Those sellers are still insulted when they receive a low offer. Well, it's not a low offer. It's where it should be. That's where comps line up. That's what I told you to either list it at on the low end or list it at in the middle end. And then you start negotiating the price, and the price that you land on, guess what? It's still in the range I gave you, but you're just not happy because it's not what you want, hoped, or needed. So now the friction is there and you are mad at me because I can't get your house sold, but you, as the seller, never take the time to think about what else it could be. And it's always price. I mean, you don't need to go get a new roof. You don't need to go do a full remodel. The house needs to be priced according to what the house is. You guys have heard me say this a million times. So this is an expectation, as I said earlier, that was not set up front. And it becomes very, very challenging to communicate on my behalf, like for myself to the seller, because I feel like I'm on eggshells. I feel like no matter what I say, it is redundant. It is pressuring them. It is not what they want to hear, which is what further causes more friction. So typically what I do is I sit down and I write out like a deep dive appraisal analysis for what I'm seeing out there. And it's a hard email to send because I'm deathly afraid I'm going to not keep my job. And again, this is even starting with the people that I give the range, but they choose the top end of the range. And I am trying to show an emotional seller non-emotional data that is the mirror the seller needs to look in. That is just like the worst part of this is trying to convince somebody that either the offer they have in front of them is the best they are going to get, or the number in front of them is like, you need to take it and run. You haven't gotten anything, right? So I'm smiling because I just like this feeling is it's just too familiar because no matter what numbers I give to a seller, they always choose the top of the range. And I always end up in this position, even though I give a number that I am comfortable with, their mind is still made up that their house is worth even more than the top of the range I gave them. So another thing you need to think about, this is number 3, maybe 4, is the holding costs. Every single month, which I have a whole video on carrying costs, your carrying costs are adding up every single month, and your price, your contract price, your future closed sales number is dwindling the longer you stay on the market. So this kind of comes to the outcome. The outcome is very simple. I'm agent number 1, I get fired. I just lost all my time and money thrown down the drain into this house because I wasn't able to have a hard conversation about price and numbers up front. So now I watch as the seller goes on to agent number 2. That agent is taken a little bit more seriously because the seller already has this experience that hasn't been that great. The seller's disappointed. The seller is angry and frustrated, probably confused as to why their house didn't sell because, again, you guys all think your house is so great, which I've been a seller. I totally get it. But agent number 2 takes over, gets you to lower the price, and poof, the house sells. And now agent number 2 has all of the praise and the accolades, and agent number 1 is kicked to the curb. Agent number 1 laid the entire path, pounded into your head that you need to reduce the price because there's nothing else that's going to sell this house. And agent number 2 gets the paycheck and the referrals and all of the future endeavors that may come with you as a business relationship because they got it done. And this is why. And I've been in both positions this year in 2026. I've lost the listing. I saw that they relisted it and lowered the price after I got fired for suggesting to lower the price. But I've also been the second agent who sought me out and they asked me what I thought about price. And I said, it's $100,000 overpriced. And they knew that their agreement was coming up with their real estate agent. They reached out to me and I did my analysis, my appraisal analysis. I explained to them why it needs to be listed here, and we got it sold in 17 days. I've been on both ends, and it's the best feeling in the world to be the second agent. And I'm very confident going into those because I know that the hard job of fighting with you, it's done. It's over. I have it easy because you as the seller are kind of defeated. You're like, I just want this house sold. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I want the house gone. I want to move into my next house. The thing is when you hire agent number 1 and there's so much resistance in the price, you are also ruining your own plans. You have plans to move. It doesn't matter if it's in-state, out-state, in-state, out-of-state, buying, renting. It doesn't matter where you're going. Your next move is on hold until you're able to sell the house. And again, I always say this, you guys as the sellers are in control of how much money you can make, of the condition of the house. You have all the control to have all of the leverage to make the buyers fight over your house. And every single seller chooses not to. So the last piece of this is the history. And when I say history, this is that I guess, a friendly reminder if you're not super aware of how it works. Whatever activity happens in the MLS stays in the MLS and it stays there forever. So if in 2026 you have it listed for 6 months and maybe you have some price reductions and then it cancels and you take it off the market because you decide to stay in your house, it's not really the best time to sell. Perhaps you rented it out, whatever the reason. When you go to list again in 2027, every single buyer is going to be able to see the history on Zillow in the MLS of how long it was on for, how many price reductions you had, that it was on the market. And now it puts a signal out to the buyer who's going to, all buyers make up their own stories about every seller. It's hilarious. But the buyer's going to make up their story about why you're selling and how you're hurting because you already tried to sell it once for 6 months and you already had price reductions, but you weren't able to sell. I mean, I really wish you guys could hear the conversations I have with buyers. And I'm not trying to rat buyers out, but it is just absolutely hysterical how sure they are that they know what's going on with the seller. And it's a total made up story that they randomly came up with just from looking at the data that you gave them from the history of your previous listing. So whatever activity you have on the MLS, it is there forever. 45 days off the market in Arizona MLS is what allows you to have the days on market start over to 0, but it doesn't erase the history. So that's why this is so important. The number one thing you can do is have the best first impression, and that best first impression is always going to be price. You don't want to be looked past. You don't want your listing to be stale, and you want to capture people in those golden 14 days where you have 80% of total buyer attention. That's a lot. And if everybody were to price their house according to what their product is, then they would be able to sell it in 14 days. And right now in 2026, when I'm looking at houses for clients and I'm looking at comps at the houses that they're interested in, I'm looking and I'm going, okay, so all of these houses that are active, all of these houses that have closed are over 100 days on market. And if they're not over 100, they're coming up on 100. And then you have those random 2 houses that sold in 6 days, that sold in 12 days. And I go and I look and it's sold for the price they started at because they priced it properly. And I know it feels like you're leaving money on the table, but you're not. My job is to do this day in and day out. I go into houses, I look at comps, I speak to appraisers. This is what I do. I eat, breathe, sleep, dream about, quite literally, real estate. I know the market. I know what your house will and won't sell for. And again, whatever you want, hope, or need to get out of a listing of the sale, it doesn't matter. It doesn't count. And because of this fantasy number that so many sellers have, I'm no longer willing to risk $5,000 to get your house on the market, to put my time and effort into a listing that I know won't sell. And if I feel like, okay, I can give you 1 week with your price, okay, we'll split it in half. Sometimes it's even 5 days I'll give you at your price. I tell you, we're going from your price to my price, and we're going to see what happens. The problem with that is that you've already had 1 price reduction now, which means buyers are waiting for the next one. And if they're waiting for the next one, they're hoping that they're going to see a pattern, that there will be enough price reductions with a similar day count in between each price reduction, and they just have their popcorn. They're just waiting, especially if they think it's overpriced. So I hope this gives you a little bit more of an understanding of A, how I work, and B, how you can fall into the listing trap and get stuck with a bad real estate agent who is using your house, leveraging your property for their own benefit. Do not let people just give you your number. I don't agree with it. You are the one as the seller who's going to be, or I guess I should say, who's going to own damaged goods at the end of the day. I want you, again, I'm here to guide, protect, and help my clients. I'd rather tell you what you don't want to hear and say, listen, call me in 6 months when that first agent doesn't work out, because I can guarantee you, if you interview me against 2 other agents and we have 3 people total, I'm the only one who's telling you the price that it should be. And the other 2 are going to say, yeah, whatever you want, because they want the listing. Totally up to you if you want to go with that type of person. But I suggest, in order to keep your equity intact, that you don't.